Welcome to Recross the Paths. My name is Cade, and my guest today is Arlo, though you will probably know them better as gaytransmulldrifter. Welcome.
Hey, how's it going, man? It's me. It's me, beloved, up and coming Cube podcast art aficionado and contributor, K Transmol Drifter.
Professional Lucky Paper hijacker, hot take submitter, now host of your own think piece production of sorts.
Yeah, come around.
So covering all sorts of ground here. Uh,
Yeah,
there are so many cool projects that you're working on, from things like podcasts to the cubes that you have going on. Wanted to pick your brain about a couple things, but I always find one of the best ways to jump into it is just to start talking cube and see what comes from it.
yeah.
There is a Jumpstart adjacent project you have called Pushstart. Would you tell us
hmm
a little bit about that?
Yeah, Pushstart is like one of those. I'm sure somebody else has made it, but it's one of those things where I was just like, how is this not like the first obvious thing to do, right? Do I have to explain like what Jumpstart is? I don't know. Like we could get into a whole thing about like cube pitches, right? But like, do you want me to give the like pitch for cube sickos? Or do you
Yeah,
want
let's
me to give the pitch that I give to like normal people?
let's do the elevator pitch and then we'll unpack it.
Yeah, it's Jumpstart Cube with powerful fair magic stuff. It's Jumpstart Cube where you are casting cards such as Thalia and Goblin Rabblemaster. It's very Bun Magic core. It's one of those, you know? It feels like kind of just like the most simple and obvious thing to do with Jumpstart Cube, but I feel like Jumpstart Cube is very underexplored. There's a lot of people who are just like, yeah, I don't know, I have all of the ones that Wizards made and I put them in sleeves and it's a cube. But there's very little info out there about like how to design and build your own stuff. And so like that was kind of just my first obvious instinct, is just like I want to make something that people can just pick up and play. It's pretty simple, straightforward, fun, fair magic stuff with powerful cards, and it's Jumpstart.
Yeah, and as you noted, Jumpstart being usually like lower power as a retail limited type thing, but this
hmm
is pretty decidedly not. Like if you once you start
Yeah.
seeing cards like Pack Rat or
Yeah.
Psychic Frog, we're not in Kansas
I'm
anymore,
the
kiddo.
world's number one defender of the card Pack Rat, but we don't need to get into that right now.
So what, like you said, it sounds like this was the obvious thing to do with Jumpstart. Was
hmm
this just like,
Yeah.
hey, I want people to do this sort of thing, or like this is a good way to jump
Yeah.
in?
You start with the concept of we're going to build a Magic the Gathering cube, and the first thing that people did with that was we're going to put a bunch of cool, powerful cards together and play them. And I'm like looking at Jumpstart, and it's like, okay, well, what's the first most obvious thing to do? Let's put some cool, powerful cards that people like playing together, and let's play them. And like I just wanted to kind of like get my bearings, like how do you even design Jumpstart Cube? How do you make that fun? What's cool and interesting about Jumpstart? And kind of going from there. So yeah, I don't know.
When you play this cube, do you get to pick which packs you use, or is it kind of a random assignment?
I don't know, what day of the week is it? No, just like, it's just like whatever. Like sometimes it's like, oh, we'll do like present three, pick one, then do that again, or just I don't know, stick your hand in the box and pick one, or like if you want to play these specific colors, do that. It's just whatever people feel like doing that day. The advantage of the Jumpstart Cube is that it removes a lot of overhead. You just
Yeah.
kind of like you give people two things and you say go play Magic together. It's very easy to get it started.
To that end, do you think of it as a kind of a new player friendly type thing, or is this designed with more experienced players in mind?
I mean everything that I designed is designed to be new player friendly in some way, because like I don't hang out with Magic players to be honest. Like mostly I play Cube with people who don't really otherwise play Magic at all. And so kind of everything that I design is in some way geared around the idea of like this needs to be understandable to someone who doesn't think about Magic every single day like I do. But like, yeah, obviously the Jumpstart Cube in particular, it's like sometimes I want to go to a music festival and play Magic with strangers. And so
Sure.
it has to be like pretty simple. Dude, I remember like I had the card Voice of Resurgence in this cube, which is just like a wall of text nonsense card. But like it's one of the only good Selesnya cards, so I had it in there for a bit. And like I was at this like like folk punk festival, and it's like hanging out outside on the patio playing Magic with people, playing Pushstart. And I like play Voice of Resurgence, and the guy I'm playing with like reads Voice of the Resurgence. He's like, "Okay, I got it," and he puts it back down, and then he like passes turn. He's like, "Wait, I need to read it again," and then he reads it again. He's like, "Okay, okay, I got it." And then like 3 turns later, he misplays around it, and he's like, "Wait, I still don't think I know what it does." So I went home and cut the card that afternoon. Like it's just
Yeah.
I don't have time for that kind of nonsense, you know?
Well, yeah, and especially when you invite somebody into an experience like this, and then if they
Right.
feel like they've gotten got by by
Mhm.
reading or
Mhm.
misreading a card.
Yeah, there is this great bit that Patrick Sullivan said on the Receivables podcast, which is like probably the best podcast about Magic ever, where he was just like, you can tell when a set is designed by somebody who thinks that Magic is fun. You know what I mean? Where it's just like you can tell when somebody thinks just like, yeah, just like attacking and blocking and trading and doing magic stuff, like that's fun on its own and you don't need all of this other stuff. And you can tell when someone believes that when you look at the things that they design.
Yeah, I like that turn of phrase too, and that sounds like based on what I've seen of your projects here, like you try to encapsulate that in these projects too.
I'm such like a minimalist at heart in terms of like how I think about like what's compelling about art. Like I really think that elegance is really something that I value highly. Efficiency is something that I value highly. Simplicity, I think, is like something to strive for. You know, that's like an ideal to me. It's just like that's like an aesthetic goal that I really strive for. And so like anything that allows me to create moments where players are feeling like they are making decisions that are interesting based on these like really simple pieces that they understand individually that can combine in like all of these different complex strategic ways. That's the juice, you know. I don't need to venture into a dungeon, etc. You know what I'm saying?
Well, certainly elegance has been kind of a buzzword for some of our friends over at Lucky Paper, for example.
Uh-huh.
Is that something that's measurable in any way, you think? Or like is there anything that would point toward elegance, or is it something you have to evaluate card by card?
Everything in the universe you can answer with it depends, but like I do think that
Sure.
like there's no other way to put it than just like I know when a card's got like some extra bulk that you don't need. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like this is something that is maybe so obvious to my brain that I almost don't even perceive as a skill of mine. But like I'm a very astute editor. You know, I'm very good at like just cutting chaff away from things. And so like when I look at magic cards and I am reading through like rules text, things that are extraneous or confusing just like stick out in my brain as very obvious. And so it's hard for me to even like articulate how I quantify that.
Yeah, because it's not like it's a word count thing. Sometimes it's just
Mm-mm.
a card can just say, to borrow from one of your writings, something could just say explore, and that automatically makes it way more complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, because Explorer is like, oh, I mean, I think about Magic the Gathering every single day of my life, and right now, off the dome, couldn't tell you what Explorer does. And like, you know, when you play with it, it's fine. It plays fine. If you add a card that did just that, like that's fine. But like as a keyword, it's just like it's not evocative enough. I feel the same way about like connive, right?
Sure.
Where it's like yeah, I like like the gameplay of the mechanic connive is pretty good, but it doesn't feel evocative of being conniving, does it? And so remembering what it does, it's like, oh, you draw a card, and then like you discard something, and then if it's a non-land, you get a counter. I think it's something like that. And it because it's not evocative compared to Cascade, very complicated mechanic, but like Cascade, you know, you are cascading cards down from the top of your library. You know, it like you can sort of like wrap your brain around it because the flavor and like the terminology is wrapped up in the mechanical thing that is occurring. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like to a lesser degree, something like flying. People
Hmm.
intrinsically grok what that looks like, but then as
Yeah.
soon as you try to describe, like, what does dredge mean? Well, sorta.
Yeah, it's tricky because like magic flavor has this sort of abstract quality to it where like if you nitpick it too much like none of it makes sense, but there does need to be this sort of visceral emotional response when you read something. And there's something else that I look out for a lot is like when I'm thinking about how do I make something that's like accessible is just like when I read the card like the first time, do I have to read it again to know what's happening? You know what I mean? If I just like read it and I get it, that's great. And like you can have a little bit of that. You can have a little bit of like you got to read it a couple times to really get what's going on. But if there's too much of that, it's like overwhelming and not fun.
Yeah, one of the phrases that's come up a couple times in your overviews or your like Riptide Lab posts,
Hmm.
you talk about complexity points, and it
Yeah.
sounds like that's kind of a key piece of that.
Yeah, yeah. Like I really try to make sure that if a card is complicated, it better be awesome. You know? Like it better be
Yeah,
so cool. Like that's something that I really look out for is like why spend complexity points on nuts and bolts cards? Why not just play Mana Leak? Why not just
yeah,
play
yeah.
Lightning Bolt? And then when you get to have a card like the Gitrog monster, which is like very cool and very weird and does this like specific thing that supports a really particular type of deck, that's like more exciting and sticks out more. If all of your lightning bolts are galvanic discharge and chain lightning, then it's like you wasted all of that complexity and all of that comprehension overhead for your players on like stuff that doesn't matter. This is also why all of my cubes run like 30 copies of the same Rainbow Land because it's just like who cares? It's evolving wilds. They all are basically evolving wilds in some way. Like just you see it in a pack, it's one of those. You take it when you need one of those.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably spend a moment talking about that with the Ash Barons and the Fair Enough Cube.
Yeah.
So you talked about thinking about complexity or trying to use that thoughtfully.
Mhm.
When you're building a pack for something like Pushstart, how do you practically go about picking and building a theme there? Or do you think of them as themed packs?
Um, some of them are more loosely themed than others. The goal with this was very just like what if you had all of your favorite legacy cube type cards, modern cube type cards, Dark Confidant, and all of his gay little friends? What if they were all in Jumpstart? Like, that was kind of the idea. And so, like, some of them are loosely themed. I think the funniest joke in Push Start is that the blue white half deck is like soldiers aggro instead of control. Just a little practical jokes to play on your control player friends. Um,
Yeah, they're looking for Supreme Verdicts and
yeah.
Sphinx's Revelation, and you're giving them Judge's Familiar.
Mhm. I love Judge's Familiar. Judge's Familiar, one of those cards that fits really well here. That's something that I've found is cool about this cube is that like because it's all fair stuff and like no one has like a really really coherent game plan. Cards that are just like, yeah, this is just like a banger draft common from 10 years ago or whatever, like those cards can like hang with some of the crazy mythics from recently just because it's like, yeah, I don't know, Ravenous Chupacabra pretty good, like kind of
Still
no matter
still
what's
pretty
going
good.
on.
It's still d it that I'm checking it right now. It still just says destroy target creature.
Mhm. That's pretty good. Puts a 2/2 on the table. Yeah, there's a lot of that happening in this cube where you're just like, I don't know, Jewel Thief? It's fine, I guess. I don't know, buddy. Vigilance and Trample, pretty good keywords.
Still good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious because often when you think of Jumpstart, you think of the kitschy titles that
Mhm.
Wizards gave to each of the packs and how they're all kind of in some cases aggressively thematic in ways that
Yeah.
are limiting. So I didn't know if that was something you were trying to shy away from or trying to lean into.
Yeah, I guess it just kind of like wasn't what was compelling to me at the time for this concept because like there's something about like this cube wants to be sort of clean and perfect and iconic. You know what I mean? I store this cube in a long box, and all of the half decks are in like black cube shells, like the Dragon Shield cube shell things, and they just have monochromatic dots on them to tell you like what what the packs are and those like match up with the cards. And so it's this very like clean, minimalist, like simple kind of thing. And I think the idea that the packs aren't even themed. It's like, no, it's just good magic cards. Like, that's it. You know? Something about that was like kind of appealing to me about what I was in the thematic head design space for this cube.
And so then thinking of good magic cards, I
Hmm.
hear there are some good magic cards in your Sicko module pack.
It's so funny, like the Sicko module, because I've barely played it to be honest.
So yeah, explain these a little bit.
Yeah, so the idea was just like, okay, so like we have a bunch of cards that were like good in modern, good in standard, good in legacy, like that kind of tier of like fair cards that are around there. And then it's just like, all right, well, what if we have two that's just like, here's Black Lotus and like, like 3 box sapphires and an Urza's Saga and like all this nonsense. I've played it like a couple times. The idea is like you each get one of them and they're like identical and you mix it in with one of the other packs and play them against each other. We played it a bit. It was kind of exhausting. It was like
Yeah.
there's a lot of like card manipulation.
Yeah, you did put Sensei's Divining Top
That
in
was a
both of those.
mistake, but sometimes you have to try things. You know what I mean? And like, kind of the idea was just like, I don't know. Here's like all the just garbage nonsense that I wouldn't put in here because it's like over the line for what I think is like kind of the power band for this cube, and it's just like, let's see what happens. So yeah, I've played it like once or twice. Yeah, you can do it. Here's the thing: the box that I keep all of the half decks in, it perfectly fits with the 20 if you don't include the sicko module. So really hard to care about it, to be honest, because the box already fits them. So like, so it's hard to want to add more packs or do more with Pushstart because it's like, but they like because they already fit in the box.
It's already there. This is a complete set.
I mean, the other thing is that people already like it. It's
Yeah.
I'm only kind of tinkering with it at this point because it's like Pushstart is such a hit, bro. It's like a bigger hit than like probably any other cube I've ever designed. It's the only cube that people have asked me to bring out specifically by name. You know what
Oh,
I
that's so
mean?
rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. I have a friend who doesn't really play Magic and doesn't like cube drafting because she doesn't understand the game enough to sit there and do a whole draft. Like that's like exhausting to her. But she like loves Pushstart. She's like, I'll play this anytime. This is fine. Like first time she played it, she was like, this is better than anything else you've ever gotten me to try to get me into this game. This is what we should have been doing the whole time. So it's accomplishing those goals. So I don't want to mess with it too much.
To that end, do you consider this project finished, or are you
Mm,
still iterating on it?
okay, to me, it's like cubes only exist in like two possible states. There's the spaghetti wall state, and there's tinkering tuning state. I would say this cube is in tuning state. I would say the difference is like when I'm early on with a cube, I'm totally fine with just like completely throwing out base assumptions or rules or guidelines that I have or ideas about how things should work. And I'm totally fine like ripping out 50 cards and just throwing a bunch of new stuff in and seeing what happens because no one cares about the cube yet. It doesn't have an identity yet, you know? Like people care about push start, so like I can't I wouldn't want to like change it too much. I basically the only thing I want to do with it at this point is like there's a couple cards I'm probably gonna take out. I'm probably gonna take out Jace the Mind Sculptor because he's so boring. The card is so boring. I was like, it's so iconic. It's Jace the Mind Sculptor. The art is sick. He was $50 when I was 15. It's so epic. But oh, what a boring card. So I'm gonna tinker with some of that stuff, and then I have been waiting till I can like order some nice proxies. I'm gonna like proxy up like a custom card that's just like an omni fetch. Like it's just like go get a land with a basic land type. Because right now for the multicolor paths, I'm using like City of Brass, and then like the cube has a lot of prismatic vistas in it. And I would rather just kind of do this like pseudo fetch shock mana base, but just like have this busted card that could never exist. Like they would never print, a card like that. They could just get whatever shock. But it's Jumpstart. Who cares?
As somebody who enjoys designing custom cards from time to time, I think
Yeah,
the benefit of designing in a vacuum like this, of like where this is not going to print, it doesn't have to
yeah,
work
yeah.
with 30 years of Magic history. This is going to fit a need for this project.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because like the Wizards official Jumpstart packs use like the thriving lands, which are like tap lands where you like pick a color when they come into play. And if you played a thriving land in Push Start, you get your face caved in by Lelia. So I gotta figure something out. And City of Brass, I was using City of Brass because I had it. I have like a box that's just like proxied copies of just like I just have like 100 copies of Prismatic Vista and like cards like that, just like for whatever like I need to do cube projects.
Yeah, you did talk about wanting to include multiple copies of the same land, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah. It's just because sometimes it's just like I just need to get a cube off the ground. Here are some lands. City of Brass, it's pretty cool. Ash Barrens, it works. You can use it. Evolving Wilds, same thing. They're all kind of the same. depending on how strong you want the fixing to be. So you just put them in there.
Are your cards marked in any way per set, or do you just have to like know if you happen to grab 2 black packs or whatever, just which
Yes,
ones go back where?
I have these like little dot stickers that match the magic colors, and they just go on the cards under the sleeve. Because all of the cards in the cube are proxied, so I don't care about damaging them. And even if they were real, I also really wouldn't care about damaging them. They're just cards. And I don't even have to explain it to people. It's so cool. Like people just like sort their cards without even like asking me how to do it because it's like so intuitive. The only problem is that I have some friends that are colorblind and they can't see which between red and green. So that's kind of a problem. So I'm gonna maybe do some stuff with like some white Sharpie on the deck so they at least know which ones are which. But yeah. When I first put it together, I did have to just like have the lists memorized and separate them out before I thought of this solution.
Well, I appreciate when a system like that kind of becomes its own little, I don't know if you want to call it a game, but you're just like sorting things back into their stacks is something
Yeah.
that's satisfying anyway.
Well, because we're cube designers, and like by virtue of being a cube designer, like in order to become a cube designer, you have to be the type of person that thinks sorting magic cards is like a really cool and fun thing to do. So,
It, it is a,
I
it
enjoy
is a
it as
cool and
well.
fun thing to do.
I agree. Not everyone feels this way. It's funny, dude. One of my like neighbors has kind of been tinkering with like a cube project a little bit and like has been asking me for advice, on and off. And like at a certain point, it's just like, I don't know, you just like kind of have to be crazy and obsessed with it. Like I kind of can't tell you what to do besides just like, I don't know, you just like, you have to want to look at Scryfall for hours. Like that has to be fun to you.
Yeah, you show somebody Skyfall, it's like, do you want to keep doing this? Because
Mhm.
if not, I have bad news.
Yeah, and I do. I do want to keep looking at Scryfall. I love looking at Scryfall. It's great.
So Bones is a good friend of mine. He and I live
Mhm.
pretty close by, and he has set up a jump start.
Yeah,
I don't know if we called it a cube at that point, but yeah, he set up a
it's
bunch of
cute.
those different packs that you could mix and match. But it was also closer to the retail limited flavor
Yeah,
of
yeah.
here is Selesnya counters or whatever
Yeah.
that they all went together in that way.
Yeah, I feel like there was sort of a motivation for me in terms of just like I'm not like I'm not the best at thinking like super super outside the box and doing like really weird stuff. Like I'm mostly interested in just like how do I make something that is fun for my friends to play? But like I want more jumpstart cube stuff to be out there because I want the people who are like even more crazy than me to make more weird jumpstart cubes. Because I feel like there's a lot of potential and it's very underexplored.
So this is like a proof of concept in a way.
I guess. I mean, like the primary motivation was just like this would be sick and fun. And I also like I wanted to have a cube that had similar gameplay to something like the Bun Magic Cube, but I didn't think that it was worth building another 360 fair stuff cube with relatively modern cards. And I was like, okay, like I gotta come up with another way to get to this type of gameplay. And so Jumpstart was like a way to do that. And it was also like a solve for just like sometimes you don't have time to draft, and also a lot of people just don't want to draft. And like, how do you do something that is still cube because cube's the best way to play the game? you know?
Well, absolutely. Well, that has to be so satisfying to think that it checked so many boxes and it's something that your friends want to keep doing.
Yeah, yeah. I am often like when I'm just asking people like, "Hey, does anyone want to play Magic?" People are like, "Yeah, can we play Pushstart?" I'm like, "Sick, dope." People love Pushstart.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So, in the vein of, if you want to call it a more normal or more expected
Uh huh.
route for Cube,
Yes.
though with a very different flavor and approach,
Right.
let's talk a little bit about the $5 Fair Nuff
Yeah.
Cube.
We're moving on from my Bun Magic cube ripoff onto my regular cube ripoff. I would say this cube is like the regular cube if like Anthony just like didn't have restraint, you know? Like he like cuz regular cube it's if you've listened to the podcast Lucky Paper Radio, but you might be familiar with it. But like the way that Anthony talks about the regular cube, he's like, I don't want decks that are completely all in on a specific synergy. I want these like light splashes of synergy. And he's like, I want it to be kind of like a powered up retail set. And like, I don't want it to be super bomby. Fair enough, like uses similar cards to the regular cube, but it's like, I would say it's like a lot more extreme in basically every way. You want to play all in aristocrats, buddy, you can play that. Like, if you want to play every single card in my deck cares about being Spellslinger, you got it, friend. If you want to cast Tenacious Underdog, hey man, check out this cube. It's pretty fun.
I think part of how you enable that too is with the mana base, and I think it's worth talking about that before we get too much farther.
Yeah, people love to talk about this mana base because it like looks like a meme, but like it's actually the thing about it is that it looks so dumb, but it just works, and that's why I did it. Okay, so
What's the meme? If it looks stupid and works, it isn't stupid.
I mean, it's not stupid, but people do go, why are there so many Ash Barons in this cube? And why does your low budget cube have a bunch of copies of the most expensive lands ever made? Okay, here was the logic of this whole process. At first, it was like, I just have a bunch of all of whatever the cheap fixing is. Like, it's here's some Evolving Wilds, here's Ash Barons, here's all of those artifacts, trinkets, etc. They're all here. And then, like, I eventually got to just like, why do I care about this? Let's just run like a bunch of Evolving Wilds or Prismatic Vistas or Ash Barons. And so I tried all of these different ones, and I ended up settling on Ash Barons. I think Ash Barons is like kind of perfect in terms of like cheap rainbow low power fixing. It is like marginally better than Evolving Wilds in most situations, and it lets you include landfall cards without them being busted, and it lets you do cool discard payoff stuff. I went with Ash Barons, and there's 30 Ash Barons.
Yeah, you did hear that correctly. There are 30 Ash Barons
There are
in the
30
list.
Ash Barons. And then there's also just like 3 of each of the just like alpha duels. They're just like proxied alpha duels. I don't know. I went through a million different iterations of this mana base for this cube. And if comprehension complexity was not a problem, I would probably just like play fetch shock mana base of some kind. But people who play a lot of Magic underestimate how stupid and confusing fetch shock mana is when you're drafting. It's nonsense.
Yeah, you wrote about this in one of your forum posts, and this made me laugh out loud when I read it. It's like the first time you try to explain to somebody that you need an arid mesa to get your stomping ground, they just look at you like an idiot.
Yeah, because it's dumb. Like it's one of like many things that like you simply would not put in a game if you were designing it from scratch, but because Magic is just this horrible like Jenga tower that has been like stacked on top of itself for 30 years, you have all of this like weird stuff like that shock mana, and when you have mastery over the game, that stuff is really interesting. Like I like doing that shock mana in drafts. It's fun. Like I enjoy it in other people's cubes, but I'm just simply not going to explain that to somebody who plays Magic twice a year. Like, I'm just not going to do it. Alpha duels are really simple, man.
Yeah.
Hey, it's a forest and it's also an island. Cool, I get it.
Do you have the version with a reminder text that says counts as both a forest and an
No,
island?
I have like proxies of like some MTGO promo version of them or whatever. They just have like the type line, like a little reminder text box that tells you what mana it taps for, and that's it. Yeah, that's perfect.
That's it.
You don't need to know anything about the game besides like the absolute basics to get, yep, it's a mountain and it's also a forest and it taps for both. If I'm playing those colors, I should probably have one. Thumbs up, you know? The only people who look at this mana base and like think it's a joke or a meme are people who play Magic. You know what I mean? People who don't play Magic, they're just like, yeah, of course, you would play these. They're simple and they do the thing. They're not broken. Like I should be. I feel like that's something else people assume. It's like, yes, obviously alpha duels are very very good, but if you cannot fetch them, they're just pretty good. Sometimes you
Yeah.
draw them and your mana is pretty good. You know?
Yeah, like, but Ash Barons doesn't get Badlands. Like, you can't
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can't cheat that anyway.
exactly. It's a very like hammer nail solution to the problem. It's very just like this makes sure people can cast their spells and it's easy to understand.
I think there's something important about that where maybe the furrowed-browed academician side of things is like, "Oh, this doesn't make sense, these numbers don't line up," but what you've
Hmm.
described is like, "I've tried it in different ways, and this has addressed my needs."
Yeah, yeah, everyone gets it.
That seems to matter a lot more than spreadsheets.
Yes, I'm so laser focused on, did people have fun? Did this make sense to them? What did they enjoy? What was working? What led to fun games? A lot more than just like, well, people on the internet say that triomes are too good, so you can't play those. But you know, like it's just who cares? Just like do something that works.
There's an excerpt from one of your forum posts that I want to read right quickly. You say about this cube: combat and value synergies are the core of gameplay, and I want players to be primarily rewarded for their ability to evaluate novel board states.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of the best summaries of fair magic that I've ever read. Like, I've heard a lot of those concepts piece by piece, but I just wanted to compliment, like, that's just a great way to summarize that. How do you practically pursue that?
How do you practically pursue those goals?
Yeah.
Um, you just play every month and take out the cards people don't like. I'm really not kidding, man. Like it's
All
just
right,
like
Arlo, thanks for your time. No, this
yeah,
is this is
I
great.
don't
We do.
like people overthink this thing, man. Like it's funny because like I've written so much. I've written so many very long posts about designing Cube and has spoken to a microphone at length about Cube several times now. But like I don't know, you just put in stuff that people like and you take out stuff people don't like. The one thing I will say is that if you're trying to design these sort of mid low power fair magicy kind of environments, the biggest thing that I look out for is cards that just like produce value over and over again because they just like make everything else not matter.
Mm,
So like Kess Dissident Mage is an example of a card that I cut from this cube because it's just like, yeah, every turn cast a spell from your graveyard. And it's just like, okay, it just does that for you and you don't have to do anything with it. And then also it's like a 3/4 flyer, you know? That's the kind of stuff I look out for where it's just like if a card is like producing a bunch of value for you, I want you to have made some sort of deck building choice to make that card produce like turn over turn value for you. Or at least like you have to invest something in it to get it out, whether that's like mana or cards or whatever.
yeah, it seems like that could be kind of exacerbated in a cube too, where so many of your cards are either at or around a similar power level. So then
Yeah.
if you get to do two of the thing or somebody else gets to do one for a single
Yeah.
card, that can roll out pretty quickly.
I just started cutting just like commander garbage cards. Like cards like Sidizzy, Brood Tyrant. It's funny because like when I say commander garbage, I don't even mean like, you know, like a lot of really modern cards that are just like here's 4 billion paragraphs of text, but just like a card like Sidizzy, Brood Tyrant, right? That's just like, yeah, I don't know, every turn mill some cards and that will also make zombies for you. It's like, okay, well then why did I build a deck? You know?
Yeah.
That's how I feel about like a lot of cards like that. Like that's how I feel about like Grave Titan. It's just like, okay, why did we play Magic? Like you just like cast this card and now you just get a bunch of stuff for free. Why did we even play a game? Who cares?
I've heard it come up a couple different times in different ways, but the descriptor of all of our decisions really mattered until they suddenly didn't.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm a big hater for that type of gameplay. It's like my least favorite thing about like retail limited as well is just like, okay, they just like cast this mythic that I literally can't beat it. It's impossible, you know?
Yeah.
Like that it's just like who cares? Like that's not a game. Like that sucks.
I remember watching at the pre-release for Foundations a little bit ago,
Mhm.
um, just watching people resolve a card like Sire of Seven Deaths,
Mhm.
and the shatter pause of players like just considering their hand, thinking about their deck, and it's like, all right, this game's over.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing to be done.
Yeah, I played a lot of that Lord of the Rings set that they did, and there's like some stupid like rare in that set. It's like Witch King of Angmar or something like that, and like
Yeah,
it's like some big stupid flyer that has like a million paragraphs on it, and like you start reading it, and you're like, okay, I'm screwed, I'm screwed, I'm screwed. Got it, okay, got it, I'm screwed, okay, and then you get to the last line, and it's like discard a card, it gains indestructible until end of turn or something like that. And it's just like, oh, okay. Like it actually is over. Like there's not even a chance that I can beat this thing. It's literally impossible. So don't make your cube like that.
yeah. So don't do that. Is the takeaway.
Yeah.
Have you found the eponymous $5 budget restriction difficult to maintain in this cube?
Hmm. No, I wouldn't say so because like it's not really a restriction. It's like just the thing that I was already doing. Because this was like the first cube I ever built, because it was like it like started out as like I bought the Card Kingdom Starter Cube when whatever the new one was at the time, which is terrible. Never buy those; they're awful. Unless you're like me, and like if you play the bad cube, you'll be like, I can fix her, like that. And that's what I did. And now the cubes have like basically nothing to do with each other. But like like I was already just like buying cards that were less than $5 because that was about how much I wanted to spend on a card. But most of the cards that I want to play in this cube are like 12 cents. And then
Yeah.
like if a card is so expensive that it goes above that, it gives me pause about whether it will be appropriate power level for the cube. So it's like it's not a huge deal really.
It's nice to have like a check in conscience that's tied to a price tag.
Yeah, like, Tarmogoyf getting low. I always check in on Tarmogoyf. I'm like, Tarmogoyf, $7. Could get down there. We'll see.
I hate to say it, the day is almost certainly coming.
Yeah, I mean, well, so Goyf would actually probably be totally fine on power level here, but it is a completely nonsense card. Again, if you don't think about Magic every day, what do you mean the
Yep.
number of
Yep.
card types? What does that mean? This one says rabbit on it. Is that included? Etc. I hate like the structure of like types and subtypes and super types in Magic and how they're all different, but the cards don't actually make that clear when in the rules text. I hate that
Yes.
stuff. It's so confusing.
Because if it references type, it is talking about subtype
Hmm.
usually, unless it's talking about card types, then it's
Yeah.
talking about super types, but
Yeah.
not all super types.
Yeah. It doesn't. Yeah. It's not good. Another one of those things where like you would never design a game to work like that, but like they had to retrofit it onto the thing that was made in a basement in 1992. So what are you gonna do?
Well, I mean, it's a pretty sturdy Jenga tower
Yeah, I
to
mean, I
held
love
up
it.
through.
I'm a diehard fan for janky old games. That's why I play Magic.
So synergy focused can sometimes be a buzzword for cube designers.
Yeah, go
Like,
on.
is this something that's actually attainable, or is it just kind of a like something we say to make ourselves feel better about not including power?
I love this question where it's just like, so like, you say the cube synergy focus. Usually when people say that, it's like a lie. What do you think about that? um,
Well, okay, you can read into that a little bit. That's fine.
no, it's a really difficult question to answer. I would say that the thing that you have to do to really make it so that synergy quote unquote matters in an environment like this is you just have to put synergy everywhere all the time, and then people will do it even if they're not trying to. So, like, I think the graveyard is a really cool part of the game. There's a lot of like intersecting mechanics that all can kind of feed into the graveyard. Like, you can have aristocrats and like discard stuff and mill stuff. You can have cards with flashback. You can have cards with embalm. You can have cards with unearth. You can have all like this different kind of like interlocking pieces. And so, like, if you just build a cube where like there's kind of just all that stuff just going on everywhere, like, and that's kind of how I think about the design of the Fair Enough cube. It's like, yeah, there's like a 1/1 counters deck, quote unquote, but there's also just like a lot of counter cards that use counters. And so if you just pick up one of the cards that pays you off for having counters on stuff, it'll probably be pretty all right in your deck, even if your deck is mostly just kind of good stuffy. Or like most of the aggro decks in this cube also have like a little bit of recursive sacrifice guy stuff playing like, Gravecrawler variants and friends and that kind of thing. And so if you kind of just like weave the good cards in by picking powerful cards that also have hooks, Frag Tusk, pretty good. It does stuff. But also, if you are quote unquote the blink deck, it's better, So you kind of just have to find ways to stitch those concepts together and kind of like trick people into putting synergies in their deck.
Well, I mean, players have to play with the cards you give them.
Mhm.
It sounds like if you're all the pieces you're giving them play in that way, then
Yeah.
that's going to start leaning that direction.
Yeah, it's funny because like as a player, I'm very inclined towards the good stuffy deck. Like I will just like, yeah, this is a good rate, I'll take this. Yeah, this one's a good rate too, I'll take this. I do that a lot. And when I play with that type of strategy in this cube, it's like, yeah, most of my cards just kind of like do good stuff, but like sometimes I have Mentor the Meek out and I do some cool stuff where I'm bringing back some of my like black recursive one drops and I'm doing kind of synergy ish stuff. So you can kind of make that happen.
Arlo, you take some really detailed draft and feedback notes from your players. Is this a practice that you would encourage others to do, or is it kind of a personal hobby thing?
Um, I think if like the goal is to like get better at cube design, I wouldn't say that it particularly would make you better. It's more just like it's more just like entertainment, I think. Like I think of anything that I write for Cube as basically just like infotainment stuff. Cuz like that's something that I had found very frustrating about a lot of Cube writing when I was getting into Cube is that a lot of it is just like so dry. And so like I just like try to write stuff that's fun, you know? And like I just like making stuff, I like writing. Sometimes I just like want to write something and sometimes that thing is a draft report. So I think it's mostly just that it's fun to write, but I don't think you need to do what I do and I don't even do this all the time when I draft of like writing these detailed draft reports, but just like taking some deck pictures and then just like writing some notes about just like think this deck is cool, like how it uses this card with this card. Maybe I could add some cards that make that interaction more consistent, etc. Just like doing that, I think is like helpful, but it's not more useful than just like asking your friends what cards they think are cool. That's the best thing you can do to get better at cube design. Draft your cube and then ask your friends what cards they thought were cool, and then make those cards good.
Yeah, if you can capitalize on what has captured their imagination,
Hmm.
it sounds like a good recipe.
Yeah, that's like a big part of my approach, especially when I'm like if I'm like starting with another cube that I'm kind of like using as a template or like kind of using it as like a springboard, or even like with like a first draft kind of like alpha build version of a cube, just like getting it drafted and seeing like what interactions come up that are like cool that people got excited about. Like what could people's decks do that was like exciting? And then as you go into iterating, it's like, okay, how do I make it so that that deck is a thing that happens somewhat regularly that people like, are able to draft?
You alluded to it just a moment ago, but I think it's worth asking, can you be good at cube design? Or is that something we should even strive toward?
I think this is like such an interesting question, isn't it? Okay, so like you and Rojo were talking about this last week, where like there's this experience of like being any sort of marginalized person in like white, cis, straight, heterosexual, male dominated like hobby community spaces like this, where it's just like you feel behind and you feel like everyone knows more than you and you feel like your ideas won't be accepted because you don't know enough about the game or like you're stupid or whatever. And like I've been thinking about this concept of like being good at cube design in this context lately where it's just like bro, like just like most rich straight cis white dudes, which is like most people who design cubes, they just like don't even think about that because they've just been told that they're smart their whole lives. You know what I mean? And like this is why I really like this podcast, right? Is like you've brought in like a lot of weird transgender people who are like brilliant, right? That we don't hear from because people who are like not part of the dominant social milieu, like they feel like their ideas are not valuable or that they don't understand things enough to talk about them. But like white guys will just start a podcast, you know?
Well, guilty, I guess.
Yeah. Like they'll just do it because they'll be just like, of course people want to hear what I say. Like, I love Lucky Paper Radio, the best Cube podcast. It's not close, but like they're just some guys. They have some thoughts about Cube. I agree with some stuff they say. I disagree with some other stuff they say. They're not like transcendent geniuses who know more than any of the rest of us do about this game or how to design a cube that's fun. They have useful input like anybody else does. They're just willing to record it every week. The other part of it is just that like I just kind of like don't think that like balance is real. um, like and I think a lot of anxieties that people have around being quote unquote good at cube design is probably around like will it be balanced, or is one deck going to be way too good? Am I too stupid to understand that this one card is way better than all these other cards? And the problem with that is that the cube is only being played by you and your friends. So it really just matters, do your friends like it and think it's fun? And so I'm a lot less concerned with like, is my cube some like perfect platonic ideal cube that everybody could enjoy if it was played 1,000 million times by everyone on the planet? And it's just like, Am I a good host? Do people like hanging out with me? Does my cube make sense? Do cool decks come out of it? Do people seem like they have fun? Do they want to play this cube again? That's being good at cube design to me. Is just like, do people want to come play your cubes because they're fun? I think like the anxieties in most people's brains are centered around like, can I make the perfect cube that it's perfectly balanced and will never be, ruined by good Magic players making good decisions.
No, no, no. Read my overview and do what I told you. Don't-
Yeah, that's also why I don't put like archetype descriptions or anything on any of my cube overviews. It's like, I don't know, here's some cards. Build a deck. Let's see what happens.
So do you think it's more about defining success differently or just
Yeah.
thinking about what goals are?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, I think this is an important thing to do with every artistic endeavor is just like, what is the scope of what you want to accomplish? You know? And like, if you are orienting your approach around a scope that you are never going to achieve anyway, i.e., like, no one is going to put my cubes on MTGO, you know what I'm saying? So why would I worry about or design my cubes assuming that that crowd of people is going to play it? They never will. I play with gay people at my house. You know what I'm saying?
Do you think there's a way for people to balance that with kind of the mid-tier of popularity of something like a large cube event that you're trying to submit a cube for? Like how do you engage with it that way?
I don't think I'm the best person to answer that because I haven't done it. But like, it's interesting though, right? Because I have talked to several people recently who did have their cubes at CubeCon, and it's like, yeah, man, it's gonna get 4 drafts. It's not that many drafts. And it's gonna be different people every time. And also, you're not even gonna be there to see it.
Yeah.
Like, like I don't know how to tell you this, but the stakes could not possibly be lower.
The reason I ask that is I think that can feel like a bigger stage for some
Yeah.
people of like, "Oh, I need to present this in such a way that it is cohesive and that it is
Mhm.
appealing and like it has
Yeah.
to be marketed somehow beyond, hey, this is something my friends enjoy or that I
Right.
enjoy."
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like for me personally, like I try to already orient my cubes around like whoever could show up and play it and have a pretty good time. Again, I haven't had my cube at CubeCon or whatever, and maybe I should. But if I get the draft decks back from those, they'll probably look somewhat similar to the ones I've always had. Like, yep, those cards are pretty good. I already knew that. It's just another few drafts. Like, it's I don't know. I get very frustrated with like the way that people talk about draft feedback and like draft data. Like, dude, we know nothing.
This is a huge can of worms with
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah. But like, just we none of us know anything about our cubes at all.
Arlo, we have covered a lot of ground,
Mhm.
and there's so much more ground to be covered, perhaps another time.
Yeah.
Uh, to try to put a bow on any of this, what sort of advice would you offer to other people who are exploring their own projects?
Mm, you have to just like look at cards. You have to have them. You have to have them in your hands. Like if you just look at computer, you will go insane and die. You have to purchase like okay, here's how I usually approach things. I buy like twice as many cards as I need to, and then I have the cards, right? And now it's a hobby and it's not looking at computer because I hate looking at computer. I want to like look at cards. You have to just do that. You have to get a pile of cards together as fast as possible and you need to draft that ASAP. Okay? Okay, so like all right, the other day I've been working on this like Dan variant involving plague rats. It's called Rat Rat. It's not good yet. Um I I made one version of this where the idea was like that graveyard order was going to matter. And me and my friend got on tabletop sim, and I think we played 4 turns of it. And I was like, okay, none of this is going to work. And I'm throwing out like half of my ideas. And I knew that like instantly, right? It's as soon as the cards are in your hand, man, as soon as you're like looking at a pack or looking at like a hand of 7, everything will click in your brain and suddenly you will know what you need to do next. So stop. My advice is like stop looking at computer and draft like this weekend.
What's the old adage? Like for every 20 minutes spent looking at a computer screen, go draft 20 times in person? I think
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think Socrates said that.
Well, Arlo, this has been a blast. As we're I just having a great time. It's
Yeah.
so good to talk with you. The question that you know is coming, one of my very
Hmm.
favorites.
Yes.
If you could have any card printed as a promo, which card would you pick and who would you have do the illustration?
Okay. Okay. I mean, it has to be like Mulldrifter, right?
I mean,
It has to be. The
seems
funny
on
thing,
brand.
the funny thing is, like, I wouldn't even say Mulldrifter is my favorite card. I like it. I like Mulldrifter a lot. It's just like it was just like a funny username. Like I literally just like I used to just like post on the Cube subreddit a lot, but like I would like delete my account like once every 3 months. And so like every new account that I would make was some variant of gay, lesbian Mulldrifter, trans gay Mulldrifter, etc., etc. And gay trans Mulldrifter was the one I was on when I made a Riptide Lab account. So that's it just stuck. That's just who I am now to everyone.
And now it's permanent.
Yeah, I don't know. My favorite magic artists are the ones who are like very abstract and surrealist. Like I really like Drew Tucker a lot. I really like Niels Hom a lot. I really like Carly Mazur, who did the faithless looting that everyone except cool gay people hate. Um,
The very polarizing faithless looting.
yeah, I okay. I'm gonna be so real about the faithless looting right now, man. Like when people talk about that faithless looting like it's like the craziest like most weird messed up ugly thing they've ever seen, I'm like, dude, have you like been to an art museum? Not even like not even like I'm not even talking about like going to like some like weird contemporary art museum. I'm like have you even just been to like your city's art museum? Like I guarantee that like whatever they have at like LACMA right now is like just as abstract as like the Carly Mazur mystical archive faithful looting.
I feel like you could also like just look at any art from ABU that isn't one of the most famous.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so much stuff that was just experimental and
Yeah.
whatever they could get.
Yeah, it just I don't know. When I see stuff like that, I'm just like it just makes me feel like people are like deeply uncultured. Like it's just like you don't have to like it, but like to be like shocked and put off by it, I'm like, dude, it's like a painting. Like it's a cool painting. Like calm down. um, so I really like that kind of stuff.
I will know that that's been a growth area for me. Was I found that I don't remember Faithless Looting was one of the early ones, but
Hmm.
especially when they started doing secret layers or various flavors of promo printings, and I was like, man, this really isn't for me, and I don't think I like it. And then
Yeah.
as time has gone on, I've grown to appreciate like even if this isn't like something I will enjoy,
Hmm.
somebody's really into this, and
Yeah.
I can be okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the secret layers are ugly as sin. But occasionally they do one where I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool. So here's what they should do, I think. I think that they should make a secret layer and it's 5 copies of Mulldrifter and it's all of like the like surrealist artists just like going like hog wild. Like give me a Drew Tucker, give me a Carly Majur, give me a Dominic Mayer, give me a Niels Hom, and just like let them just like go crazy with it, and it's all the card Mulldrifter. Uh, my alternative request is they should abolish the reserved list, and then they should do a secret layer where it's like the Power Nine, and they're all like Sharpie proxies. I
Oh,
don't think
so
it.
good.
I don't think they should do that. Like it would be a bad idea to do that for a bunch of reasons. But I really want to like read the posts about it, so I think they should
Oh
do
yeah.
it. Yeah, because there would be a lot of funny posts. That's what being a Magic fan is all about. It's about reading like funny posts when the Wizards does something that is like just unforgivable.
Well, speaking about reading funny posts, if people want to follow more of what you're working
uh,
on, where would be the best place for us to point them?
that's a great question. I am on the Riptide Lab forums because it's a forum, and I like being on a forum because it makes me feel like it's 2003 again.
Just like Socrates.
Yeah, I love hanging out on Riptide Lab, bro. It's like me and like a bunch of 40-year-olds from the Netherlands, and we're just talking about cube design. It's the best. So yeah, I've posted a bunch on there. I'm gay trans Drifter on there. I'm gay trans Drifter on Cube Cobra as well. If you want to look at my cubes, I did one podcast recently. I posted it in some of the Cube discords. It's on SoundCloud on the account Gay Trans Drifter. I might do more like one-off, like kind of monologue-y podcasts in the future. It's basically just like, do I have the energy and time to do them? I don't know if you like just like listening to me talk and you don't care if it's about magic, you could listen to the podcast Cartridge Cinema Club. It's pretty good, I think. I have a YouTube channel with one YouTube video on it that has 80,000 views for some reason. And maybe someday I'll make a second YouTube video. So you can find that on YouTube under the name gaytransmulldrifter.
There you go. Well, Arlo, this has been a delight again. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for your time and
hmm
for my goodness for leading us on this wild ride.
I think this was a barn burner, personally. I think we knocked it out of the park.
It'll go down in at least the top 25 so far.
People are going to be talking about this one for at least 2 days in the community content discussion channel in the Cube Talk Discord.